What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben and welcome back to the Bench Guys for another episode of Ben Builds with Joe and our 1/48 scale F8F Bearcat by Hobby Boss. Today we're going to go ahead and crack into the kit. We're going to grab some plastic, some paint, some glue. We're going to just have some fun. We're going to see what we can do with the cockpit and move on from there. Also, good news, we did receive our second reference material here for the Bearcat. This is a fantastic book, guys. I've been really impressed. I've been really reading through it and looking at all the pictures and details and whatnot. So I think this book with our detail and action gives us a really good basis to work from. So let's go ahead and dive right on in. Now today I want to go ahead and start off with some basic work in the cockpit, and I don't want to necessarily assemble everything 100% completely right now. I actually want to go ahead and just kind of mock it up, and I want to test fit and dry fit and see what I can do and kind of get an idea of how this all goes together. Not only will that give us an opportunity to look for any sort of missing parts, but it will also help us to visualize what we're going to do for paint, because I believe the F8F has either interior green or flat black, and some combinations of those two colors, different parts, components, and consoles and whatnot. So I want to go ahead and just kind of scope it out, kind of start beginning the assembly process, and we're going to go ahead and see how it all goes together. So let's go into our first time lapse, get this thing cracking. All right, everybody, we are back. And after a mock-up of the cockpit, I really am very impressed with how this kit is going together. But I did notice a couple of things. We are missing some equipment. The first part we have here is the throttle. As you can see on the left-hand side, almost near the canopy rail, that's missing. So we have to go ahead and scratch build that. And to do that, I have kind of rifled through my spares box, and I have found a bunch of little parts and pieces that will work perfectly for that. So I'm going to go ahead and custom scratch build one of these throttle quadrants. Again, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be 100% accurate. It may be a little bit larger or smaller than what it would be in real life, but that's okay. I'm just out here to have fun, and this is one of the things I really enjoy doing. I love scratch building things and kind of upping the detail. Even if it's not 100% accurate or perfectly measured out, if it looks the part, I'm happy with it, you know? So that's what we're going to go ahead and do. We're going to create a throttle out of spare parts, pieces of sprue, and whatever else we can find. It's a pretty simple design though. I don't think it'll be that difficult to do. We just need a body, then we need a couple of levers. I think we can handle it. Then once I kind of get this all squared away, I want to go ahead and glue it down to the sidewall of the fuselage. But what am I going to mount it to? That's the question. First thing I wanted to go ahead and do is mark off the very top of our sidewall console, and that's going to give us our space from that line all the way to the bottom of the cockpit rail. All of that is fair game to go ahead and scratch build. So I marked that off to know exactly where I can go ahead and start my scratch building, and we're going to go back and consult our references and figure out what we need to do in order to add some structural detailing. Because once we add that in, then we can hang our parts and pieces on top of that structural detailing, give it a little bit of a 3D effect, and also making it a little bit more accurate. Right out of the box, this will build up into a very nice looking Bearcat. But you know me, I like to kind of add things and change up things here and there. So this is just one of my things I really enjoy doing, and I think it's going to add a bit of character and some detail to the interior. Also, we are missing two other parts on the opposite side of the fuselage. We are missing the O2 regulator, and we we are missing the hand crank for the canopy. Those two parts are actually very prominent as well. You can see them very clearly by looking just right into the cockpit and on the right hand side. So I'm going to go ahead and also scratch build that. So whatever I do on this side in terms of our structural detail, I have to repeat on the opposite side. So as long as I get it set up, I can kind of figure out the measurements. It should be okay. I can just kind of eyeball it because it's really tight in there. You're not going to see a whole lot, but you will see a little bit. And I just want to give the impression of there being something there. So we're going to go ahead and jump into our second time lapse, and I'm going to push on and I'm going to get most everything I can scratch built for in here in the cockpit. And that will include a little bit of extra stuff, like for example, there's a console that's missing on the lower right hand side by the chair. I want to go ahead and add that, and I want to go ahead and scratch build not only the throttle quadrant, but also the O2 regulator, and I want to go ahead and get the hand crank looking the part. Doesn't have to be perfect, like I said, just has to be close enough for me. If it looks good at 3 feet, I'm happy with it, right? That's all I needed to do. Let's go ahead and push on into that second time lapse. We're going to do some scratch building, guys. We're going to have some fun with this. We're going to make some stuff out of nothing, and we're going to see what it comes out to. So let's see what we can do. And with the sidewalls all nicely detailed up, I think this looks pretty cool. So on the right side, as you can see here, we've got our structural detailing, which is okay. It's not perfect, but it'll work. We also have our hand crank device and a little push rod there for the canopy opening mechanism. And we have our O2 regulator, which is kind of a circular piece of plastic, just glued on the front of that some rogue PE that I had sitting around. If we go ahead and dry fit the cockpit tub assembly up onto the side of the fuselage, you can see that it actually fits very nicely and it adds a little bit of detail, kind of spices things up in there. So that's what I was going for, and I think it looks pretty decent. Also, as you can see, I did add in a little bit there on the instrument panel. We've got the little front plate kind of kicking down right there by the control column. That was just something I pulled off of a Focke-Wulf 190. I just cut off one of the spare instrument panels, shaped it up, and glued it down. So that is perfect. I also took the liberty of making an oxygen tube, something that would plug into like a face mask for the pilot. And this is going to be painted, and we're going to position that right up next to that O2 regulator that we scratch built and string it back all the way to the corner of the chair underneath the cockpit railing. That's what my references show, so that's what we're going to go ahead and do. And for the other side as well, we have our throttle quadrant and our structural detailing. We do see some detail in there. Even though it's a very tight cockpit, you can see some of that fun detail, and it adds a little bit of life, makes it a bit more interesting, at least to me. Now let's talk a little bit about paint here, guys. I'm going to be using some interior green by Vallejo, and I'm going to be using some Tamiya flat black. And my goal is to use flat black as more of a primer coat to go ahead and add in some shadows, and then to come back in with my interior green and go over certain panels to kind of bring them up a little bit, and then a further contrast paint on top of that with some Tamiya yellow green to add a little bit more color and some shading and fading in the paint itself. Now, flat black is going to be used for the instrument panels, for the side consoles, for any handles that we have in the actual aircraft. Also for the throttle and for the O2 regulator, that's going to be flat black, and I think that's going to be a really good contrast from the interior green to that flat black. And again, it's based off my references, so it should be fairly accurate, at least for the Dash 1. So on with our next time lapse, guys. Let's go ahead and grab that paint, get the airbrush ready, paint the cockpit black, interior green, and get those highlights with yellow green all set up. Let's push this forward and get this thing all nicely painted up. Let's do it. All right, everybody, we are back, and I really enjoyed doing all that painting, using the airbrush with different colors and using some highlight colors and getting that shadow effect kind of to pop through. Super, super fun. So this is good. We're going to go ahead and leave it like this, and we're going to move on with some detail painting. And I want to go ahead and do a couple of things. First, I want to go ahead and take some NATO black, which is what I have here, and I want to come in and paint any of these side consoles, handles, or levers or whatnot. And then we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of detail painting with some red and some yellow. I want to add in some really fun looking dials there on the sides of the cockpit, and then of course on the instrument panel as well. I also want to go ahead and paint up some of the switches and dials right there at the throttle and also at the O2 regulator. So I need to get all of that painted up, and we're just going to go ahead and push on from there. And after that, I think the cockpit will be more or less painted. We just have to work a bit more on the instrument panel, which will be next episode, but we are looking pretty decent, guys. Now, this does not come with any seat belts. It does not come with any seatbelt decals, at least that I saw, and I didn't feel like spending $8 to buy photo etched seat belts for this. So I want to go ahead and make my own, and I'm going to go ahead and use Tamiya tape and then some 0.3mm solder to go ahead and make buckles and latches and whatnot. It's not going to be perfect, but I think it's going to give us something to look at when we look down through the hood onto the cockpit seat. So on with the last time lapse, guys. Let's get some detail painting all squared away, and let's go ahead and make up some seat belts and get those glued down. Whew, we are almost there, guys. Let's keep on pushing. All right, everybody, we are back, and I gotta tell you, that was a lot of fun. Making seatbelts really does kind of push your level of patience, though. It's a little bit more finicky, a bit more finesse, but I think these seatbelts look good enough. Looking down through that cockpit, you're gonna see something, it'll have some action, some interest there. I'm not really going for accuracy so much as I'm going for artistic license. Also, doing a little bit of dry brushing really has helped to kind of pop all the details, and our detail painting that we did for the switches and gauges there and the different levers, that really turned out well. I think it looks really, really nice. As you can see, we have all of our seatbelts nicely tacked in there. We have our instrument panel, which needs some dials, by the way, but we'll get that next episode. And we have a little bit of scratch building we did with some wires. We added in that spare little box there on the right side underneath the pilot seat, repositioned that lever, and now angles forward like at a 45-degree angle. So that looks a little bit better. I'm overall very happy with the cockpit tub. For the sidewalls, as you know, I added in some structural detailing, and then I scratch built the throttle quadrant, which I glued there on one of the structural members. Did a little detail painting on that. On the right side, actually, I had to slice off a little bit of my structural detail there because it didn't quite fit with the cockpit tub. But now that that's cut out, you're not going to see it. It's hidden behind the instrument panel, and it fits perfectly. So I think that looks pretty good. I am happy with everything. Now I'm going to have to go ahead and add in our oxygen hose, which I have painted up in an olive drab color. And this is it right here. So eventually, once I get kind of everything glued in and ready to go, we will be fitting this right here onto the side of the fuselage. Now, my references show that it comes off the O2 regulator and it kind of droops down and it goes back up to the upper corner between the fuselage and the seat. So that's probably where I'm going to go ahead and terminate this. And I have to cut it down to size, get it glued into place, but I think it's going to be okay. And it's going to add a little bit of character. And those seatbelts, they're not the best seatbelts out there, but they're the best ones I've made so far. And I think they add a lot of interest and detail to the chair. This is a great little kit, guys. I'm having a blast with this particular version. I know Joe's hard at work on his Dash 2. I can't wait to see what he comes up with. So that's it for us, guys. I am done for the day. I've done a lot of work here, so we are good. I have other kits to go ahead and work on, so we will see you back here on the next episode of Ben Builds with Joe. Until then, you guys know the drill. Go out there, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool, and we will see you back here on episode number 3 of our 1/48 scale F8F-1 Bearcat. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you soon.